Imagine looking up at the night sky, waiting for the end of the world. You might be watching for a blazing asteroid, a dying star, or a rogue planet. But the ultimate cosmic predator doesn't glow, and it doesn't announce its arrival. It is a perfect, lightless void, and it is already here. Most apocalyptic scenarios imagine a monster passing through, shredding Earth in a fraction of a second, and leaving a trail of debris before vanishing into the deep dark. But what if this invisible intruder didn't just pass by? What if a black hole entered our solar system, slammed the door behind it, and settled into a permanent orbit? We humans are exceptionally good at spotting things that shine. Our most powerful telescopes constantly sweep the cosmos, cataloguing billions of distant stars, tracking the fiery tails of comets, and keeping a watchful eye out for the glowing embers of far-off galaxies. We scan the heavens for incoming asteroids, calculating their trajectories based on the sunlight bouncing off their rocky surfaces. If a world-ending object is headed toward Earth, we assume we will see it coming from millions of miles away. But this assumption is humanity's greatest fatal flaw. The universe hides its most destructive forces in absolute darkness. Black holes are not actually empty holes at all, but rather vast amounts of matter crammed into an incomprehensibly small, hyper-dense space. Because of this extreme compression, their gravitational pull is so staggeringly powerful that absolutely nothing, not even light, can escape their grasp. And because they trap all light, they are entirely invisible to our eyes and our standard optical telescopes. When we think of black holes, our minds usually gravitate toward the supermassive giants, like the stupendously large TON 618 or Phoenix A star, which are monsters with masses billions of times greater than our Sun that anchor entire galaxies. Or perhaps we picture stellar mass black holes, the collapsed dead cores of massive stars that went supernova at the end of their lifespans. But the cosmic assassin slipping past our outer defenses isn't a dead star, nor is it a galactic anchor. It is something far older, much smaller, and infinitely more terrifying. It is a primordial black hole. According to theoretical physics, these microscopic black holes did not form from dying stars, but instead popped into existence during the chaotic, high-energy infancy of the universe, just moments after the Big Bang. Before galaxies or even the first stars had time to form, these tiny, dense pockets of gravity were already wandering the cosmos. And because they are so incredibly ancient and so impossibly small, we have never actually observed one to confirm its existence. But the math says they are out there, drifting silently through the void as rogue black holes, completely untethered to any star system and roaming the interstellar darkness. The true horror of a primordial black hole lies in its deceptive proportions. A black hole does not need to be the size of a solar system to rip one apart. If a primordial black hole had the exact same mass as planet Earth, its event horizon, the boundary marking its absolute point of no return, would be less than 2 centimeters wide. It would be smaller than a coin, yet it would pack the gravitational pull of our entire world into that microscopic sphere. If it had the mass of our Sun, it would only measure about 5.8 kilometers across. And if a black hole the size of a simple grapefruit wandered into our neighborhood, it could easily contain the mass of a giant planet. This is the ultimate stealth predator, an object the size of a piece of fruit, completely devoid of light, traveling through the freezing vacuum of interstellar space. It doesn't emit any radiation we can easily track, it doesn't reflect the light of our Sun, and it doesn't trigger our early warning systems. It is simply a wandering shadow, a relic from the dawn of time that might even be the missing puzzle piece to the obscure theory of dark matter. Some scientists speculate that the mysterious dark matter holding our universe together, a substance we can measure but never see, is actually made up of swarms of these invisible, microscopic black holes. And now, one of the universe's oldest mysteries has crossed the threshold of our cosmic backyard. Most hypothetical disaster scenarios focus on a fast-paced flyby, where an object moving at a fraction of the speed of light tears through the system in a fraction of a second. If a tiny black hole flew past Earth like a bullet, the destruction would be almost instantaneous. But our intruder is doing something far worse. Caught by the massive gravitational well of our Sun, this wandering void is losing its forward momentum and becoming a permanent resident. A long-term capture scenario means we won't face a sudden fiery extinction, but rather a protracted, decades-long collapse of the orbital mechanics that have kept Earth safe for billions of years. For decades, it has drifted closer, a silent assassin moving through the interstellar medium. It crosses the boundary of the heliosphere without making a single sound. There is no fiery collision, no sudden explosion of light to warn the astronomers back on Earth. The invisible intruder just glides into the outer limits of the solar system, slipping in completely undetected. We continue to live our daily lives, entirely oblivious to the fact that a gravitational monster has just entered the room. We go to work, we look through our telescopes, we worry about global warming and passing meteors. But out in the freezing darkness, billions of miles away, the gravitational scales of our solar system are beginning to tip. The intruder is incredibly small, but its mass is immense, and its mere presence is starting to pluck at the invisible strings of gravity that hold our planetary neighbors in a delicate, perfect harmony. We won't see the black hole itself, but very soon we will see its terrifying reflection in the chaotic movements of the outer ice worlds. The trap has been set, the cosmic door has been locked, and the slow, agonizing death of the solar system has quietly begun. For decades, astronomers have been staring into the deep freeze of the outer solar system, searching for ghosts. When you look billions of miles beyond the orbit of Neptune, you enter a chaotic, twilight frontier known as the Kuiper Belt, which borders the vast Oort cloud of icy debris. It is a freezing wasteland filled with small, icy bodies, dwarf planets, and the ancient, frozen debris left over from the birth of our solar system. These distant voyagers are known as trans-Neptunian objects, or TNOs. For the most part, they follow predictable, orderly paths around the Sun, bound by the gentle, fading tug of our star's gravity. But eventually, as our deep space telescopes became more sophisticated, we began to notice something deeply unsettling about a specific, isolated cluster of these distant ice worlds. They weren't moving the way they were supposed to. Instead of drifting randomly or following standard elliptical paths, the orbits of these specific TNOs were oddly clustered together. They were sweeping out into the dark abyss of space in the exact same direction, and they were tilted at the exact same bizarre, anomalous angle off the planetary plane. In the meticulous clockwork physics of our solar system, this kind of synchronized orbital clustering does not just happen on its own. It is the undeniable, invisible signature of a massive gravitational disturbance. Something incredibly heavy, lurking in the pitch-black outer reaches, was herding these icy rocks like a shepherd guiding a flock. Astronomers eagerly calculated the required gravitational force to cause this anomaly, and the math pointed to a massive, unseen object. The equations dictated that this invisible shepherd needed to be at least 17 times more massive than the Earth, and it had to be locked in a sprawling orbit roughly 10 times further from the Sun than Neptune. The scientific community, and soon the entire world, quickly rallied around a thrilling, almost comforting explanation. They called it the Planet 9 hypothesis. The idea of a hidden ninth planet was intoxicating. It was framed as a grand, missing sibling of our solar family, a super-Earth or a miniature, dark ice giant hiding in the extreme cold, waiting patiently in the dark to be found. Society embraced the mystery with a profound sense of wonder. We pointed our most advanced infrared and optical telescopes toward the exact coordinates where the mathematics said this giant world should be. We fully expected to catch the faint thermal glow of an icy giant's core, or perhaps a glimmer of distant starlight reflecting off a thick, frozen methane atmosphere. We assumed it was just a matter of time before we snapped the first grainy photograph of our new cosmic neighbor. It was a beautiful, hopeful theory. But it was also humanity's most fatal miscalculation. As the years dragged on, the silence from the outer dark became deafening. Despite aggressively sweeping the exact region of space where Planet 9 absolutely had to be, we found absolutely no evidence to back up the theory. No thermal signature, no reflected sunlight, no dimming of background stars to indicate a large planetary body passing in front of them. It was an absolute optical void. This is where the narrative of a joyous cosmic discovery began to curdle into a creeping, undeniable dread. A planet holding up to 17 times the mass of Earth cannot simply be invisible. Even in the absolute freezing depths of the outer solar system, a rocky or gaseous body of that immense size would emit a faint hum of residual heat left over from its violent formation. It would block the light of the stars behind it. But this object was doing none of those things. It was a ghost. Then, the math began to change. Astronomers stopped looking for a planet and started looking at the raw behavior of the light itself. When they looked closely at the starlight passing through that specific empty region of space, the light wasn't being blocked by a physical surface. Instead, it was violently warping. The light from distant, ancient stars was bending into eerie, unnatural arcs, acting as if it were passing through a cosmic magnifying glass. This optical distortion is known as gravitational lensing, and it only happens when a staggeringly dense amount of gravity bends the very fabric of space-time around it. The equations had to be run again, this time stripping away the comforting, optimistic assumptions of planetary science. When the new calculations were finalized, the terrifying truth finally snapped into focus, revealing the ultimate false alarm twist. The object disturbing the trans-Neptunian objects was indeed at least 17 times more massive than Earth, but it did not have the physical volume of a planet. In fact, it didn't have the volume of a moon, or a mountain, or even a single grain of sand. All of that immense, world-shattering mass was packed into an extremely dense amount of space, no bigger than a simple grapefruit. We had spent years enthusiastically searching for a planet, utterly blind to the fact that we were being hunted by a massive void devouring everything in its path. The object hiding in the dark wasn't a hidden ninth planet. It was a primordial black hole. Our own optimism had blinded us to the universe's most efficient and ancient predator. If it were a planet, it would simply orbit quietly in the dark for the rest of time, a fascinating but harmless addition to our cosmic maps. But a black hole of this astonishing density popping into existence during the chaotic, high-energy infancy of the universe just moments after the Big Bang is an entirely different beast. By assuming it was just another rocky neighbor, we had inadvertently given it the greatest advantage any predator could ask for: time. We had spent decades treating its gravitational whispers as a harmless scientific curiosity, completely failing to realize that this wandering abyss wasn't just passing through the outer limits of our system. Its orbit was degrading. The complex gravitational dance it was performing with the Kuiper Belt and Oort cloud objects wasn't just a sign of its presence, it was a mechanism of planetary friction. Every single time it flung an icy comet out into the void or hurled an asteroid toward the inner planets, it transferred a tiny bit of its immense orbital energy. It was slowing down. It was tightening its grip. The microscopic event horizon, though smaller than a piece of fruit, possessed a gravitational tether strong enough to slowly drag it closer to the immense, inescapable gravitational well of our Sun. The false alarm of Planet 9 had kept us looking for a friendly neighbor, while a cosmic assassin slipped past our outer defenses, silently locking the door behind it. Now, the invisible intruder was no longer a theoretical anomaly on a chalkboard. It was a permanent resident, sinking ever deeper into the orbital layers of our home, and the gentle clockwork of the solar system was about to shatter. The moment of realization doesn't come with a fiery explosion or a sudden plunge into absolute darkness. Instead, it arrives in a quiet room, bathed in the pale glow of computer monitors, as astrophysicists stare at the orbital data of trans-Neptunian objects out on the icy fringes of our cosmic neighborhood. For years, the numbers have stubbornly refused to make sense. The scientific community had desperately clung to the hope that these gravitational anomalies were simply the result of Planet 9, a distant, hidden world lurking in the dark. But planets have physical volume. They reflect faint light, they emit infrared signatures, and they block out background stars when they pass in front of them. This object, however, is completely undetectable across every single wavelength of the electromagnetic spectrum. It possesses the mass of a giant planet, yet it occupies an incredibly small amount of space. As the calculations are verified, and then verified again, a chilling, undeniable consensus spreads through the world's observatories. We are not looking at a hidden, rocky planet. We are looking at a black hole. But this terrifying revelation immediately births a new, even more profound mystery. We understand how standard black holes are born. When a massive star, at least 8 times heavier than our own Sun, reaches the explosive end of its life, its core collapses inward under its own staggering gravity, creating a stellar mass black hole. These dead stars are the cosmic corpses that litter our Milky Way galaxy. But the invisible intruder lurking in our outer solar system defies this logic entirely. Its mass is all wrong for a collapsed star. It is far too small, perhaps only the size of a simple grapefruit, yet packing the immense gravitational punch of multiple Earths. It couldn't possibly have been born from a dying star, because no star small enough to create this exact mass could ever naturally collapse into a black hole. This leads the brightest minds on our planet to an inescapable, mind-bending conclusion. The predator that has just slipped past our outer defenses is not a dead star at all. It is a ghost. It is a perfectly preserved relic from the very dawn of time. To truly understand what is currently dismantling the outer edges of our solar system, we have to look back 13.8 billion years to the very first chaotic fractions of a second after the Big Bang. Before the first stars ignited, before spiral galaxies spun into existence, before the basic atoms that make up your body even had time to form, the universe was an unimaginably hot, dense soup of pure energy and rapidly expanding matter. In this high-energy infancy, the expansion of the universe wasn't perfectly smooth. There were microscopic pockets where matter was packed so tightly together that it instantly collapsed under its own crushing weight. These violent quantum fluctuations ripped tiny holes in the fabric of space-time, popping into existence as primordial black holes. Unlike the supermassive monsters that anchor the centers of galaxies, or the stellar mass black holes born from the violent supernovas of dying stars, these primordial black holes were forged in the fires of creation itself. They are quite literally the oldest objects in existence. For nearly 14 billion years, this microscopic void has been drifting silently through the deep cosmic ocean. It has survived the birth and death of countless stars, wandering untethered and unseen through the freezing interstellar medium. It is an ancient, frozen snapshot of the Big Bang, and it has just parked itself in our cosmic backyard. But the sheer horror of its origin is entirely eclipsed by what this discovery means for the greatest unsolved mystery in modern physics. For decades, astronomers have observed a glaring, fundamental flaw in the way the universe works. When we look at spinning galaxies, including our own Milky Way, they are rotating so incredibly fast that the gravity from all their visible stars, gas, and dust shouldn't be enough to hold them together. By all the laws of physics, they should fly apart like a spinning cosmic pinwheel. The only way galaxies can exist as they do is if they are held together by a vast, invisible scaffold of extra mass, something that doesn't interact with light, doesn't reflect radiation, but exerts a massive, undeniable gravitational pull. We call this invisible glue, dark matter. For generations, humanity has assumed dark matter must be some exotic, undiscovered, subatomic particle. We built multi-billion-dollar underground detectors and smashed protons together at near-light speed, desperately trying to find a single fleeting spark of this elusive substance. But what if we were looking for the wrong thing all along? A highly obscure, fiercely debated theory among fringe astrophysicists is suddenly thrust into the blinding light of reality. What if dark matter isn't a cloud of harmless, exotic particles? What if the missing mass of the universe actually consists of a vast, swarming ocean of these microscopic, ancient black holes? The implications are absolutely paralyzing. It means the universe is not held together by a gentle, invisible mist, but by trillions upon trillions of microscopic gravitational predators wandering silently in the dark. It means the empty space between the stars is heavily mined with these ancient voids, objects as small as coins but heavy as mountains, drifting through galaxies completely unnoticed. And it means our solar system, which has enjoyed billions of years of relative isolation and perfect planetary stability, has simply had its luck run out. We haven't just encountered a random rogue object, we have collided with the unseen architecture of the cosmos itself. As the global scientific community grapples with this paradigm-shifting discovery, a profound existential dread sets in. The intruder is no longer just an abstract anomaly on a computer screen. The universe's greatest mystery has manifested as a tangible, local threat. It does not communicate. It does not emit light. It simply consumes, distorts, and dominates. By confirming that this is a primordial black hole and the missing piece of the dark matter puzzle, humanity realizes the true, inescapable scale of its helplessness. We cannot nuke it. We cannot deflect it with advanced technology. We are not dealing with a stray asteroid that can be nudged off course with a kinetic impactor. We are dealing with a fundamental force of nature, an immortal remnant of creation that has been sweeping through the galaxy since the very beginning of time. And worst of all, the realization dawns that this ancient relic is not just passing through. Its trajectory data, refined over agonizing months of frantic observation, confirms our darkest fears. As it grazed the dense gravitational fields of the outer solar system, the delicate interplay of cosmic mechanics stole a fraction of its momentum. It has been captured by the sun's gravity. The invisible architect of the universe has dropped its anchor. The slow death of the solar system isn't a mere possibility anymore. It is a mathematical certainty, written in the chaotic, unraveling orbits of the distant ice worlds. The predator is in the house, the doors are locked, and there is absolutely nowhere left to hide. For billions of years, the absolute edge of our solar system has been a quiet, frozen graveyard. Far beyond the orbit of Neptune, past the chaotic scattering of the Kuiper Belt, lies the ultimate frontier of our cosmic neighborhood. This is the Oort cloud, a vast, spherical shell of icy debris that completely surrounds the solar system. It is filled with trillions of ancient dormant comets, chunks of frozen methane, and rocky asteroids that have been drifting in a gentle, perfectly balanced slumber since the very birth of our Sun. Because it is located up to 100,000 times further from the Sun than the Earth is, the gravitational tether holding these icy bodies in place is incredibly weak. They exist in a delicate, fragile harmony, moving at a glacial pace through the freezing dark. But this serene, icy shell is also our first line of defense, and it is the exact place where the invisible intruder makes its terrifying presence known. When the primordial black hole silently crosses this boundary, it does not suck up the entire Oort cloud like a vacuum cleaner. That is a common Hollywood misconception. Instead, it acts like an incredibly heavy, invisible bowling ball rolling through an infinite field of fragile glass pins. Even though the physical size of the black hole's event horizon might be smaller than a piece of fruit, its gravitational influence stretches out across billions of miles. As it plows through the Oort cloud, it creates a massive gravitational mess, wildly distorting the fabric of space-time around it. The incredibly delicate orbits of these icy, comet-like objects are instantly shattered by the passing void. The black hole's immense mass grips the surrounding space, yanking trillions of frozen relics out of their ancient hibernation. What happens next is a masterclass in orbital chaos. The sudden gravitational kick hurls millions of comets and asteroids completely off their predictable courses. While some of these ancient ice worlds are violently flung outward into the uncharted depths of deep interstellar space, an unfathomable number are violently redirected. They are suddenly pulled from the outer edges of the solar system and flung aggressively inward, sent hurtling on a direct collision course toward the inner planets, including Earth. The invisible predator has just fired a cosmic shotgun blast right at the heart of our solar system. Down on Earth, humanity is entirely oblivious to the dark mathematics unfolding billions of miles away. We are still living in the comforting illusion of the false alarm twist, believing that our planetary neighborhood is safe. But you cannot hide the disruption of millions of comets. The very first physical signs of the intruder's arrival do not come in the form of a black hole blocking out the sun, but as a spectacular, unprecedented change in our night sky. It begins beautifully. Astronomers notice a sudden uptick in cometary activity, and soon the general public is treated to the most breathtaking meteor showers in recorded human history. Night after night, the skies are painted with brilliant streaks of burning ice and rock as the first, fastest wave of Oort cloud debris impacts Earth's upper atmosphere. People gather on rooftops and in open fields, marveling at the glowing trails, completely unaware that they are watching the beginning of the end. But the light show doesn't stop. Days turn into weeks, and weeks turn into months, and the bombardment only intensifies. The beautiful meteor showers rapidly escalate into a terrifying, constant meteor storm. The sheer volume of debris entering the inner solar system is staggering. The night sky is no longer a canvas of calm, distant stars. It is violently alive, perpetually illuminated by the fiery deaths of thousands of meteors burning up in the stratosphere every single hour. This is where the deeply ingrained psychology of human denial takes over. Faced with a changing sky, humanity tries desperately to downplay the threat as a passing phase. Governments, space agencies, and news networks scramble to package the terrifying reality into a digestible, temporary weather event. They assure the public that we are simply passing through a dense, uncharted cluster of ancient comets. They bring experts onto television who confidently explain that the solar system is vast, and this intense period of cosmic bombardment will soon blow over. We tell ourselves that this is just a fascinating, once-in-a-lifetime astronomical anomaly. Furthermore, we place our blind faith in the gas giants. For billions of years, Jupiter has acted as our majestic cosmic shield, using its immense gravity to catch or deflect dangerous comets and asteroids away from the rocky inner. Planets. The public is endlessly reminded of Jupiter's protective role. We are told that the giant planet will sweep up the vast majority of this incoming Oort cloud debris long before it ever threatens Earth. Society clings to this comforting narrative, choosing the safety of denial over the terrifying, unexplainable anomalies in the orbital data. People go back to work. Stock markets briefly dip, then stabilize. We adjust to the burning sky, normalizing the constant meteor storms as just another quirk of the modern era. But the denial cannot last forever. Jupiter is incredibly massive, but even its immense gravitational net cannot catch millions of projectiles fired from every conceivable angle. Earth begins to take hits. At first, it is just the remote, uninhabited areas of the globe, a blinding flash over the open ocean, a shockwave that flattens a remote Siberian forest. But as the barrage from the Oort cloud intensifies, the impacts become more frequent and far more deadly. Satellites are shredded in orbit, disrupting global communications and plunging entire continents into digital darkness. The constant meteor storm becomes a daily, agonizing game of Russian roulette for every city on the planet. Yet, amidst the panic of the falling rocks, a few isolated astronomers staring at the data realize a truth far more horrifying than the impacts themselves. Comets do not just suddenly alter their trajectories by the millions, they are reacting to something. The burning rocks raining down on Earth are not the primary threat, they are merely the bow wave of a much larger, invisible ship. The meteor storm is the physical proof that our solar system is being actively disturbed by an unimaginable mass. The realization slowly sets in that the comets aren't an anomaly, but a herald. The invisible intruder has breached our outermost walls, the first phase of our destruction is complete, and the true monster is quietly making its way closer to the sun. There is a distinct, agonizing difference between a sudden catastrophe and a scheduled execution. If a black hole flew past Earth at the speed of light, the destruction would take fractions of a second. We wouldn't even have time to blink or process our own end. But the invisible intruder that has taken up residence in our solar system is not a passing bullet. It is a slow, methodical dismantling of the cosmic clockwork, and the true horror of this long-term capture scenario lies in the waiting. Once the world's scientific community verifies the math and understands that this primordial black hole is not just passing through, the secret cannot be kept. The data leaks, the press conferences are held, and overnight, humanity is forced to confront its own inescapable extinction. We are not running from fire and brimstone. Instead, scientists track the event in real time as society reacts to the impending doom. Every optical and radio telescope on Earth locks on to the distortion in the outer dark, trying to study what is, essentially, the solar system's slow destruction. Billions of people tune into live streams, watching the feed from observatories on their smartphones and televisions. At first, there is nothing to see but empty space, but soon the outer gas giants begin to experience strange gravitational perturbations and orbital chaos. The first physical evidence of our doom is written in the movement of Neptune. For centuries, the ice giant has drifted serenely in the deep freeze. Now, humanity watches through its screens as the planet's familiar blue hues shift into deep crimson. This is a redshift, an optical illusion caused by the wavelengths of light stretching under the immense pull of the black hole's gravity as the planet is drawn away from us. We watch in paralyzed fascination as Neptune's 14 known moons, including the massive Triton, are ripped from their stable orbits. They do not vanish in an instant. Over agonizing months, we track their orbital decay as some are flung out into freezing interstellar space, while others are captured by the invisible gravity well, spiraling toward a dark center we still cannot see. Then, light from Neptune itself begins to bend around the dark sphere, creating an eerie gravitational lens that makes the gas giant seem to flatten and smear across the black. void, as if reality itself is bending. With Neptune's orbit corrupted, the delicate gravitational balance that holds Uranus, Saturn, and Jupiter in place begins to shift. The pale blue giant Uranus starts to deform, its orbit stretching and warping as the invisible mass tugs at its icy mantle and stirs its superheated core. On Earth, the psychological toll becomes devastating. Society does not immediately collapse into anarchy. Instead, it sinks into a deep, collective depression. People still commute to their jobs, they still buy groceries, and they still pay their bills. But they do so under a sky that defies logic. Humanity begins to witness impossible horrors, feeling as though time itself is slowing down right in front of them. We know from the shifting mathematics that even a slight alteration in Earth's orbit will eventually change our distance from the Sun, meaning our seasons will warp our climate. Systems will break and life will begin to die off in waves. The dread is paralyzing because the math is infallible. The true scale of the horror sets in when the black hole's influence reaches Saturn. For a time, the planet's iconic rings have circled in a perfect, delicate balance of ice, dust, and rock. But as the gravitational gradient between the near and far sides of the planet becomes enormous, Saturn begins to tremble. Because the icy particles forming the rings are only loosely bound by gravity, they are the first to unravel. Through our telescopes, we watch the rings form long, ghostly arcs that look like strands of silver string being wound around an invisible spool spiraling away into the dark. Saturn's 145 known moons, including the massive, nitrogen-rich Titan, are thrown into complete disarray as their orbits violently decay. The jewel of our solar system is slowly being dismantled, stripped of its magnificent rings and its orbiting companions, and this cosmic tragedy is streamed in high definition too. A helpless, captive audience on Earth, but the final, crushing blow to human hope comes when the black hole's gravity begins to challenge Jupiter. For billions of years, this monumental gas giant has acted as our cosmic shield, its massive gravity deflecting comets and asteroids away from the fragile inner planets. We desperately hope that Jupiter's immense mass, which is twice that of all other planets combined, might somehow anchor the solar system and resist the dark. But against a black hole, even our greatest protector is entirely outmatched. At first, the intruder's pull subtly distorts Jupiter's magnetic field, which is 20,000 times stronger than Earth's, causing the invisible magnetic lines to twist and collapse. Then, its dense atmosphere begins to bulge and compress, and we watch in real time as the Great Red Spot, a massive storm system that has raged for centuries, starts to elongate and fragment under the mounting gravitational stress. This is the ultimate psychological torture of long-term capture. We are not destroyed in a sudden, merciful flash of light. We are forced to bear witness from the cosmic bleachers as the architecture that has cradled Earth for 4.5 billion years is meticulously unraveled, layer by layer, planet by planet. As Jupiter's orbit begins to drift and the outer asteroid belt destabilizes, showering the inner system with debris, the terrifying realization dawns on humanity. The outer defenses are gone. The delicate balance is shattered. The gravitational center of our solar system has permanently shifted, and now the invisible intruder is turning its immense, inescapable weight toward the inner rocky worlds. Pop culture and science fiction have heavily conditioned us to believe that a black hole is the ultimate unstoppable cosmic vacuum cleaner. We have all seen the terrifying online simulations where a dark sphere casually strolls past a gas giant, slurping it up in a matter of hours or even minutes, turning whole. Worlds into swirling disks of hot plasma before vanishing them forever. In those rapid-fire scenarios, planets are violently stretched and pulled apart in an instant, a process known as spaghettification, where tidal forces tear a world into a glowing ribbon of incandescent debris. But actual physics, especially the agonizingly precise mathematics of orbital mechanics, is rarely that fast, and it is rarely that merciful. The invisible intruder that has infiltrated our cosmic neighborhood is not performing a swift apocalyptic drive-by, it is settling in. Because it has entered a long-term capture scenario caught in a complex gravitational dance with our Sun, the destruction of our solar system will not be measured in minutes, hours, or even months. It will be measured in decades. This is not an instant annihilation. This is a protracted, agonizing collapse of the planetary order, a slow-motion car crash on a galactic scale, playing out generation after agonizing generation. To truly understand how this slow death unfolds, we have to completely rethink how our solar system operates. From a young age, we are taught that everything simply orbits the Sun. But in reality, everything orbits the center of mass of the solar system, a point in space known as the barycenter. Usually, because the Sun is so incomprehensibly massive, containing over 99% of all the mass in our entire planetary neighborhood, that center of gravity sits safely inside or just slightly outside the Sun's fiery surface. But now, there is a profound rival in the dark. Even if this primordial black hole is only the physical size of a grapefruit, its staggering mass is so incredibly immense that it begins to aggressively drag the barycenter out into the empty, freezing void of space. The fundamental gravitational anchor that has held our planetary family in a perfect clockwork harmony for 4.5 billion years is being violently uprooted. As this invisible anchor slowly shifts into the dark space between the planets, the worlds of our solar system do not just fall straight into the black hole. Space is far too vast, and the planets possess too much forward momentum to simply drop into the void. Instead, their orbits begin to permanently stretch and warp. They degrade from perfect, stable circles into wild, elongated ellipses. And the first true victims of this structural collapse are the majestic titans of our system, Jupiter and Saturn. For billions of years, these colossal gas giants have ruled the outer dark, maintaining a wide, respectful distance from the inner rocky worlds. But as the black hole's gravity constantly tugs at them, stealing a tiny fraction of their orbital energy with every passing year, their paths become fundamentally corrupted. Through our telescopes, humanity watches over the course of years, and then decades, as Jupiter and Saturn are dragged into terrifying new trajectories. They are no longer sweeping in gentle, predictable circles, they are plunging inward and rocketing outward in extreme egg-shaped orbits. Jupiter, an absolute monster of a planet that possesses twice the mass of all the other planets combined, undergoes a horrifying transformation. Instead of being instantly swallowed or instantly stripped of its gas, it is transformed from our solar system's greatest protector into the ultimate weapon of mass destruction. As its orbit stretches to an extreme degree, its path begins to violently cross into the inner regions of the solar system where it absolutely does not belong. Every single time this rogue gas giant swings closer to the Sun, its immense gravitational field acts like a cosmic wrecking ball swinging freely through a fragile glass house. The delicate architecture of the solar system begins to shatter. The asteroid belt, a massive scattered ring of millions of rocks sitting between Mars and Jupiter, is completely destabilized by Jupiter's new, rogue trajectory. The gravitational balance that kept those ancient asteroids safely in place for eons is ruined, sending a constant, terrifying barrage of massive boulders hurtling toward the inner planets in a chaotic swarm. But the falling rocks raining down on the inner worlds are nothing compared to the psychological terror of the gas giants themselves. Saturn, having already had its beautiful, icy rings slowly unraveled and stripped away by the competing gravitational tides, is now a deformed, churning sphere of angry gas. It is dragged into a wildly intersecting orbit that occasionally brings it dangerously close to its larger sibling, Jupiter. The sheer gravitational friction between these two wandering titans as they pass each other causes massive internal heating, spawning continent-sized, hyper-violent storms in their atmospheres that glow furiously in the deep dark. This is not a disaster that happens in a single afternoon, allowing society to simply close its eyes and meet its end. It is a generational trauma. Down on Earth, children are born into a collapsing system, living under a sky that their grandparents would barely recognize. The familiar constellations begin to warp and smear slightly due to the extreme gravitational lensing caused by the black hole wandering the outer system. But the most horrifying visual change is the erratic movement of the wandering planets. Instead of being steady, comforting points of light, Jupiter and Saturn become erratic, looming violently bright and visibly massive in the night sky as their elongated orbits. Bring them tens of millions of miles closer to Earth than they ever should be, before fading back out into the freezing void. The psychological toll of living under this chaotic ceiling is entirely immeasurable. Humanity must endure the soul-crushing knowledge that every single time Jupiter swings inward on its decades-long orbit, it alters the gravitational layout of the inner solar system just a little bit more. Society watches, paralyzed, as the outer architecture of our home is meticulously dismantled piece by piece. The outer ice giants, Uranus and Neptune, having already had their atmospheres boiled by tidal friction and their moons ripped away by the invisible intruder, are eventually flung completely out of the solar system. The shifting barycenter and the chaotic tug-of-war acts as a cosmic slingshot, ejecting the ice giants into the interstellar abyss, transforming them into frozen rogue planets. Tumbling into the absolute dark, they are the lucky ones. They have escaped the slow death. But Jupiter and Saturn are far too heavy, and they are too deeply entrenched in the shifting gravity well of the black hole and the Sun. They are trapped in a deadly, inescapable orbital dance, and their wild, swinging trajectories are slowly, mathematically creeping toward the inner habitable zone where Earth resides. For decades, Earth remains technically safe, desperately clinging to its familiar orbit around the Sun. We adapt to the constant meteor showers. We adapt to the strange, shifting skies. We even adapt to the existential dread of watching the outer planets slowly tear each other apart. But the mathematics of our survival are shrinking with every single rotation. The constant, unending gravitational tug-of-war between the Sun, the hidden primordial black hole, and the massive rogue gas giants is beginning to aggressively pluck at the delicate strings holding the inner planets in place. The inner solar system begins to buckle under the strain. Mars, the red planet, begins to exhibit a terrifying, unpredictable wobble in its axial tilt. Venus experiences massive, uncorrectable orbital drift, its path around the Sun widening as the center of gravity shifts further away. And down on Earth, the oceans begin to respond to the subtly shifting gravitational tides, growing more aggressive, more erratic, and deeply unpredictable as the crust of our planet groans under the distant but mounting pressure. The horrifying realization finally washes over the scientific community and the public alike. The true, ultimate danger of a black hole moving into our solar system isn't that it will immediately swallow Earth whole like a monstrous predator. The danger is much slower and much more agonizing. The true danger is that the protracted collapse of the entire planetary order will eventually pull Earth itself out of its safe, warm cradle. The invisible intruder doesn't even need to come close to us to end our world. It simply needs to rewrite the rules of gravity that keep us safe. The decades-long escalation has finally reached its mathematical breaking point. The outer walls have fallen, the gas giants have been turned into weapons, and now the invisible predator in the dark is turning its full, terrifying attention toward the fragile, rocky worlds of the inner system. For 4.5 billion years, our pale blue dot has drifted securely within a miraculous invisible boundary. Scientists refer to it as the circumstellar habitable zone, but the rest of humanity knows it simply as the Goldilocks zone. It is an incredibly narrow, fragile band of space wrapping around our sun where the conditions are absolutely perfect. Here, the solar radiation is balanced so precisely that the temperature is just right, neither hot enough to boil our oceans into vapor, nor cold enough to freeze them into solid blocks of ice. This delicate, perfect harmony has allowed liquid water to flow across our surface, continents to bloom with vibrant green life, and humanity to build a sprawling, technologically advanced civilization. We have constructed our entire existence on the absolute, unshakable certainty of this balance. We expect the sun to rise on a reliable schedule, the seasons to change with predictable rhythm, and the ocean tides to gently lap against our shores. But gravity is the ultimate, uncompromising master of the universe, and our invisible intruder is about to rewrite the fundamental rules of our existence. The primordial black hole, our ancient lightless predator, has already dismantled the outer gas giants, stripping away our cosmic shields and permanently shifting the gravitational center of the solar system. Now, its immense, inescapable weight is pulling at the fragile inner rocky worlds as it settles into its long-term capture, entering a chaotic and deeply unstable dance with the sun. The gravitational ropes holding Earth in its perfect circular orbit begin to severely fray. We are not instantly swallowed, nor are we immediately spaghettified into a ribbon of subatomic particles. Instead, humanity is subjected to a cosmic torture that is far more protracted and agonizing. Our planet's orbit begins to experience extreme wobbling. The combined, fiercely competing pull of the sun and the wandering black hole stretches our previously near circular path into a wild, highly eccentric ellipse. The gentle clockwork of the solar system is shattered, and Earth is violently pulled out of the habitable zone. First, the shifting gravitational tides drag us outward, pushing our planet away from the comforting warmth of the sun and pulling us closer to the frozen, desolate orbit of Mars. As the distance between Earth and our star rapidly increases, the psychological and physical terror of extreme climate change begins to set in. It does not happen in a single day, but the transition is terrifyingly fast on a planetary scale. A new, unnatural, and brutal winter sets in. The skies take on a pale, sickly hue as the incoming solar energy dramatically drops. The very first signs of our impending doom are the failing of the equatorial climates. Snow begins to fall in the heart of tropical rainforests, and the global average temperature plunges steadily, hurtling downward toward absolute zero. Within a matter of agonizing months, the polar ice caps surge forward with unstoppable momentum, swallowing entire northern and southern continents in a relentless march of impenetrable white. The oceans begin to freeze over, trapping massive global shipping fleets in miles of solid, unyielding ice. Without sufficient sunlight, the foundation of our entire global ecosystem begins to systematically collapse. Photosynthesis grinds to a complete halt, causing the rapid, devastating death of plant life and the total failure of agricultural crops across the globe. Humanity is plunged into a desperate, feral scramble for warmth, burning through global fuel reserves at an unprecedented rate just to keep the encroaching, deadly freeze at bay. Entire nations are buried under miles of glaciers, and billions of people realize they are now living on a rogue world, drifting helplessly toward a deep freeze in outer space. The Earth becomes a silent, white tomb, encased in ice and shivering in the dark. But the horror of the black hole's long-term capture guarantees we do not simply float away into the peaceful quiet of the void. We are strapped to a cosmic pendulum. Just as the remnants of society begin to adapt to the brutal, endless winter, migrating deep underground to tap into whatever geothermal heat remains, the orbital mechanics mercilessly snap back. As Earth hits the farthest, slowest point of its new, warped elliptical orbit, the combined gravity of the Sun and the black hole violently slingshots our frozen planet back. Inward, we begin a terrifying, accelerating free fall toward the inner solar system, hurtling directly back toward the blinding heat of our star. As we cross back through the remnants of the Goldilocks zone, there is no sigh of relief, because our momentum guarantees that we do not stop. The black hole's gravity yanks Earth dangerously close to the Sun, dragging us far closer to the inferno than we have ever been in our planet's history. The deep freeze is instantly shattered by sudden, massive spikes in temperature. The encroaching glaciers that buried our cities melt in a matter of weeks, unleashing global, catastrophic flooding that wipes away the coastal ruins of human civilization. The oceans thaw, but they do not return to their gentle, life-giving state. As the temperatures continue to rocket upward, the water literally begins to boil. The atmosphere transforms into a suffocating, superheated greenhouse. Super hurricanes, fueled by the staggering oceanic heat and extreme pressure gradients, scour the remaining land masses, leveling whatever fragile infrastructure somehow survived. The Ice Age. Humanity is forced to endure extreme climate change at a speed that defies all logic and evolutionary biology. We are roasted by our own star, trapped under a sky that feels as though it is actively trying to eradicate us, as the climate violently swings from absolute zero to boiling heat. In a single warped year. Yet, the atmospheric torment is only a fraction of the nightmare. The black hole is not just altering our path through space, it is physically assaulting the structural integrity of the Earth itself. As our planet swings erratically between the Sun and the massive, invisible void, it is subjected to immense, agonizing, and constantly conflicting tidal forces. The black hole's immense gravity pulls on one side of the Earth significantly harder than the far side. Our planet is not a solid, unbreakable sphere of rock. It has a remarkably thin, fragile crust floating over a massive, churning ocean of molten magma. The immense gravitational strain begins to knead the Earth like a ball of clay. Even before the visible destruction begins, you would feel a deeply unsettling sensation, a sickening realization that the ground is constantly shifting underneath you as the very bedrock of our world literally stretches. And then the Earth's crust violently cracks. This is not a localized seismic event. The immense tidal forces cause fault lines on the exact opposite side of the world to slip simultaneously. Entire tectonic plates shift, buckle, and shatter under the overwhelming gravitational stress. The planet erupts in extreme earthquakes that tear across entire continents, dropping towering mountain ranges into dust and splitting vast valleys wide open to reveal the glowing, superheated mantle below. Volcanic eruptions become a terrifying daily occurrence, with the planet's crust rupturing everywhere at once to violently expel thousands of tons of ash, magma, and toxic gas into the already tortured, boiling atmosphere. The oceans, no longer driven by the gentle pull of the moon or the shifting of the wind, are now controlled by pure, unadulterated gravity. The water rises into unstoppable mega tsunamis, hundreds of feet tall, surging uncontrollably across the broken continents and drowning anything that remains on the coastlines. The Earth becomes a bleeding, ruptured world, physically deformed by the invisible monster lurking in the dark. Amidst this unimaginable geological and atmospheric apocalypse, humanity suffers one final, heartbreaking loss. The Moon, our oldest and most faithful cosmic companion, is caught in the crossfire of this colossal gravitational tug-of-war. For eons, the Moon has stabilized our tides, kept our axial tilt in check, and illuminated our night skies. But the black hole's gravitational force is far stronger than anything the Earth-Moon system has ever endured. Through our telescopes, we watch as the Moon begins to violently tremble in its orbit. Its once perfect circular path severely elongates, stretching into an incredibly unstable ellipse as the black hole wrenches it away from Earth's grip. In a violent, merciless display of cosmic power, the Moon is completely ripped away from our sky, leaving us utterly alone. Without the Moon's stabilizing presence, Earth's axial tilt spirals completely out of control. This loss dramatically worsens the erratic, violent shifts in our seasons, plunging our global climate into pure, unpredictable chaos. We are left trapped on a planet alternating helplessly between a sterile surface paved with bubbling magma and a frozen, dead ball of ice. We have been violently ripped from our habitable zone and subjected to the slow, agonizing death of orbital chaos, our home stretched, damaged, and bleeding debris out into the freezing vacuum of space. We have become a pawn in a terrifying celestial game, completely at the mercy of the shifting gravity wells. And yet, this is only the prelude to the final act. The invisible intruder has fractured our world and decimated the inner solar system, but it has not yet consumed us. As the inner planets collapse into ruin, the black hole moves into its final dominant position, directly challenging the only remaining anchor of our solar system. The true apocalyptic battle for the center of our cosmic neighborhood is about to begin. The horrifying climax of the inner system collapse feels like the definitive end of all things. As the primordial black hole tears through the shattered remnants of the gas giants and bears down on the rocky planets, every remaining telescope, every mathematician, and every terrified survivor on Earth fully expects the final curtain to fall. We have watched the simulations. We have been told our entire lives that a black hole is an uncompromising cosmic vacuum cleaner, a monster that will eventually swallow the sun and every world orbiting it, leaving absolutely nothing behind but a dark, empty void. But as the black hole enters the innermost sanctum of our solar neighborhood, the absolute most terrifying twist of this entire apocalyptic saga finally reveals itself. The invisible intruder stops its inward march. It doesn't swallow the sun. It doesn't devour the earth. Instead, the universe throws us a curveball that defies all human intuition and forces us to confront an entirely new, agonizing reality. The black hole stays. Through an incredibly complex and infinitely delicate mathematical anomaly, the black hole's trajectory and momentum perfectly counter the immense gravitational pull of our sun. Rather than plunging directly into the heart of our star to consume it, the primordial black hole gets caught. The two most massive objects in our local universe suddenly lock into a violent, inescapable gravitational embrace, establishing a terrifying new binary system. The solar system, which has been in a state of free fall and catastrophic collapse for decades, suddenly hits a rigid, unyielding wall of orbital mechanics. The collapse halts, but the nightmare is far from over. Our planetary home eventually stabilizes, but it settles into a brand new, highly chaotic configuration that permanently rewrites the fundamental rules of our cosmic neighborhood. Imagine looking up at the sky in this new, distorted reality. The comforting, singular yellow sun that bathed our planet in warm light for 4.5 billion years is no longer the solitary king of the sky. The sun and the black hole are now orbiting each other at an incredibly close distance, separated by roughly 1/10 of the original distance between the Earth and the sun. They are locked in a frantic, terrifying death dance, whipping around a shared center of gravity at blinding speeds. To an observer on Earth, the visual is profoundly, deeply unsettling. The sun appears wildly distorted, its fiery plasma constantly being pulled and stretched into a teardrop shape by the intense gravitational tides of its dark companion. And right beside it, a massive spherical distortion in space bends the starlight around it, acting as a terrifying, invisible counterweight. But the true horror of this new binary system is what it requires from the surviving planets. In order for the remnants of the solar system to remain stable and avoid being completely sucked up into the black hole's point of no escape, the sheer physics of the new gravitational center demands an extreme toll. The gentle, leisurely orbit that Earth once enjoyed is entirely obliterated. To survive in this new massive gravity well without falling inward, the orbital velocity of the remaining planets must drastically increase, accelerating to speeds incredibly close to the speed of light. Earth is grabbed by this new gravitational whip and violently accelerated. We are flung around the new binary center in an incredibly tight, frantic ellipse. Because our planet is traveling at a significant fraction of the speed of light just to maintain its chaotic orbit, the very concept of time and seasons is violently shredded. A full year on Earth, a complete revolution around the center of our solar system, no longer takes 365 days. Because of our extreme velocity and tighter trajectory, a year is now over in the blink of an eye. The planet cycles through extreme, punishing perihelions and aphelions in a matter of days or weeks. The sky above is a dizzying, nauseating blur of shifting stars, a blindingly bright, distorted sun, and a creeping, omnipresent sphere of absolute darkness. The solar system has not been destroyed, but it has been conquered and permanently colonized. The intruder is now a permanent resident, the new dark lord of our cosmic neighborhood. It dictates the tides, it commands the orbits, and it holds the Earth in a permanent state of high-speed hostage. We have transitioned from the agonizing anticipation of a slow death into the permanent, heart-pounding terror of long-term capture. The old solar system is entirely dead and gone, replaced by a frantic, high-energy pinball machine where the slightest miscalculation in planetary momentum means instant annihilation. Yet, against all astronomical odds, the battered, bruised, and broken rock we call Earth is technically still here. But survival in the cosmos is rarely a victory. It is often just a prolonged suffering. As the dust of the planetary collapse settles and the new chaotic binary orbit is locked in, humanity is forced to reckon with the horrifying reality of our new existence. We are no longer the masters of our domain. We are cosmic survivors, clinging desperately to a dying world that has been forcefully relocated to the very edge of the abyss. As the Earth is dragged into this new, wildly erratic orbit, the comforting blanket of solar energy we once relied upon becomes highly unstable and, in many places, completely non-existent. Because the black hole and the sun are actively competing for dominance, and because our orbit has been stretched and warped into an extreme ellipse, there are prolonged periods where Earth is cast into the deep, freezing shadows of the outer void. The biggest problem we face in this new configuration is the catastrophic absence of incoming, reliable solar energy. The planet goes completely dark. Thanks to the sudden collapse of our atmospheric systems and the infamous greenhouse gas effect failing under the extreme conditions, the global temperature begins a terrifying terminal plunge. It does not happen instantaneously, but it is brutally fast. After the first few weeks in our new, darker orbit, Earth's average surface temperature drops to absolute 0 degrees. The oceans, which were previously boiling from the tidal friction of the inner system collapse, rapidly reverse course, freezing over into solid, miles-thick sheets of impenetrable ice. By the end of the first year of our long-term capture, the global average temperature plummets to a staggering negative 101 degrees. The surface of the Earth transforms into a barren, lifeless ice world, whipped by supersonic freezing winds and bathed in the eerie, warped twilight of the black holes. Gravitational lens. Without consistent sunlight, the biological engine of our world shuts down entirely. There is absolutely no photosynthesis. The process by which all plants generate food ceases to exist, causing all remaining flora to die off in a matter of days. This creates a devastating ripple effect throughout the entire global food chain. The majestic forests wither, the oceanic plankton perishes under the ice, and the animals inevitably follow. Humanity, the apex predator of the old world, is faced with the absolute certainty of starving to death on a frozen rogue rock. But humanity is a uniquely stubborn species. Driven by a primal, unyielding will to survive, the remnants of human civilization abandon the frozen, dead surface of the Earth. We retreat deep underground, tunneling into the very bedrock of our shattered planet. We seek out the last remaining pockets of geothermal heat, huddling in subterranean megacities built around the cooling core of our world. We become a species of the dark, rationing dwindling supplies, growing synthetic fungi in the shadows, and passing down memories of a warm, yellow sun that now only exists in legends. However, geothermal energy can only sustain a civilization for so long. The core of the Earth is slowly dying, bleeding its heat out into the freezing vacuum of space. If humanity is to truly survive the long-term capture, if we are to rebuild our civilization and thrive in this dark new era, we must find a new source of limitless power. And in the ultimate poetic irony of our cosmic survivor story, our salvation might just come from the very monster that destroyed our world. Astrophysicists, working tirelessly in freezing subterranean laboratories, look to the sky and realize that the primordial black hole isn't just a static void of destruction. It is an incredibly dynamic engine of cosmic physics. Black holes possess angular momentum, they spin, and our invisible intruder, born in the chaotic infancy of the Big Bang, is spinning at an unfathomable, mind-bending rate. This extreme rotation holds the key to the ultimate survival theory. The universe is filled with a faint, almost imperceptible hum of energy known as the cosmic microwave background, or CMB. This is the weak ancient radiation left over from the original explosion of the Big Bang itself. Normally, this radiation is entirely useless to us, too weak to power even a light bulb. But a rapidly spinning black hole acts like a supreme cosmic magnifying glass. Theoretically, if a black hole spins fast enough, its immense gravitational maelstrom can capture this ambient background radiation and violently compress it. The math reveals a breathtaking possibility. The black hole's spin could compress the invisible CMB radiation directly into optical wavelengths, the exact same wavelengths of light and energy that used to be emitted by our missing sun. Because of the intense gravitational funneling at the poles of the spinning black hole, these newly compressed wavelengths wouldn't just scatter into space. They would be funneled into a highly concentrated, brilliantly intense, narrow beam of pure, usable energy. Humanity's final, desperate act of survival becomes the most ambitious engineering project in the history of the universe. We must find a way to align our shattered orbiting planet with this narrow beam of compressed cosmic light. If we can capture this focused beam of optical radiation, our frozen planet would instantly have a limitless supply of usable energy once again. We could power our underground cities forever. We could melt the ice caps, artificially heat the atmosphere, and perhaps, eventually, return to the surface of our world. We would no longer be orbiting a star. We would be actively harvesting the rotational energy of a primordial black hole, turning the ultimate weapon of mass destruction into the ultimate battery. But the question lingers, echoing in the quiet, frozen tunnels of our subterranean world. Even if we succeed, even if we tame the dark light of the black hole and carve out a meager, high-speed existence in this chaotic new binary system, what exactly have we become? We are no longer children of the sun, bound to a gentle, predictable clockwork of seasons and tides. We are hostages of the void, riding a battered rock at the speed of light around a dark abyss, harvesting the echoes of the Big Bang just to keep the cold away. As we look up through the miles of ice, waiting for that narrow beam of compressed radiation to pierce the dark and bring us life, we have to wonder, are we simply an anomaly, a stubborn speck of dust refusing to be wiped away by the cosmic broom? Or are we a terrifying glimpse into the deep, hidden truth of the universe? If primordial black holes truly make up the missing dark matter of the cosmos, swarming by the trillions in the unseen spaces between the stars, then perhaps we are not alone in our dark fate. Perhaps the galaxy is filled with lost worlds just like ours, worlds pulled from their warm cradles and forced into long-term capture. Perhaps we are simply the newest members of a silent, unseen community of cosmic survivors, a civilization forever cursed and forever adapting to live in the gravity of shadows. The apocalypse did not end with a sudden, merciful fade to absolute nothingness. Instead, humanity wakes up to a shattered, deeply unrecognizable reality. The invisible intruder that drifted silently past the Oort cloud decades ago has permanently rewritten the architecture of our home. Earth, battered, bruised, and completely stripped of its stabilizing moon, is now trapped in a chaotic, high-speed orbit around a monstrous binary system. On one side, the deformed, bleeding remnants of our dying sun. On the other, a lightless void of infinite density. As the solar system finds its terrifying, unstable new equilibrium, the remaining survivors hiding deep within subterranean bunkers are forced to confront an impossible reality. The black hole isn't leaving, it has claimed us. And so, the ultimate question of human endurance emerges from the dust. Could Earth actually adapt and survive in this new dark orbit? The short-term answer is incredibly bleak. The sun is being systematically drained, its life-giving plasma siphoned off into a glowing accretion disk. Eventually, our star will fade completely, leaving Earth entirely reliant on fading geothermal heat and whatever dwindling fuel reserves humanity has left. The surface is an uninhabitable wasteland, alternating between a frozen tomb and a violently shifting tectonic nightmare. But human ingenuity is born from the deepest desperation. As the brightest surviving minds look up at the very monster that dismantled our planetary neighborhood, they begin to theorize a wild, desperate lifeline. What if we could stop running from the darkness? What if we could harvest energy directly from the black hole itself? To understand this theoretical salvation, we have to look at an invisible energy field that permeates the entire universe. It is called the Cosmic Microwave Background, or CMB. This is the incredibly weak, faint radiation left over from the explosive birth of the universe during the Big Bang. Normally, this background radiation is entirely useless to us, hovering just barely above absolute zero and completely invisible to the human eye. But a black hole is not just a heavy object. It is a violent, churning manipulator of space-time. Like many celestial bodies, black holes have angular momentum, meaning they actively spin. If this ancient primordial black hole is spinning fast enough, its immense gravitational forces could theoretically interact with the cosmic microwave background in an extraordinary, life-saving way. The extreme rotation of the black hole could catch this ancient weak radiation and violently compress it, shifting it directly into optical wavelengths. Astoundingly, these would be the exact same wavelengths of light that are currently emitted by our dying sun. The physics of this rapidly spinning void would act like a colossal cosmic magnifying glass, funneling this compressed radiation into a massive, concentrated, narrow beam of pure, blinding energy. If the remnants of humanity could somehow harness this beam, or if Earth's chaotic new orbit happened to align perfectly within its path, our frozen, dying planet would suddenly have a brand new source of usable energy. We would no longer rely on the nuclear fusion of a burning star, but on the mechanical spin of a lightless void, literally feeding off the residual echoes of the Big Bang itself. But like every single interaction involving a black hole, this miraculous salvation comes with a terrifying, mind-bending catch. For Earth's planetary orbit to remain stable around this rapidly rotating, energy-beaming black hole, and to avoid being sucked past the event horizon into oblivion, our orbital velocity would need to be staggeringly fast. We would need to travel at speeds incredibly close to the speed of light. In this high-speed, dizzying cosmic carousel, the very concept of time and space would violently warp. A single year on Earth, a full revolution around our dark master, would be over in the absolute blink of an eye. Our civilization would be forced to evolve in a hyper-accelerated state, whipping around a singularity at relativistic speeds while bathing in the compressed synthetic light of the universe's creation. It is a bizarre, deeply unsettling vision of the future, a society living entirely underground on a rogue world, sustained not by the warmth of a gentle yellow dwarf star, but by the furious, mechanical energy harvested from a gravitational predator. We would become a species uniquely adapted to the extreme, thriving in the chaotic, razor-thin margins of orbital mechanics. But as we look out into the vast, freezing expanse of the Milky Way, this desperate survival plan forces us to confront a chilling, existential possibility. We now know that these microscopic primordial black holes are not isolated anomalies. They are ancient relics from the dawn of time, wandering silently through the interstellar medium. If the obscure, terrifying theories hold true, and the vast, invisible scaffolding of dark matter is actually made up of trillions of these lightless voids, then our galaxy is an absolute minefield. There are countless millions of these predators drifting through the cosmos right now, slowly dismantling other solar systems, pulling other planets out of their habitable zones, and locking other stars into deadly binary dances. As we huddle in our subterranean bunkers bathed in the compressed light of a spinning void, we have to wonder, out there, in the infinite dark, orbiting other invisible singularities, are there others? Are there other desperate species who watched their skies tear apart, who saw their gas giants unraveled and their suns bled dry, only to find a mathematical loophole to survive in the freezing ruins? We survived the long-term capture, but the universe is impossibly old, and it is full of ghosts. As we look into the absolute black of our new cosmic center, the most haunting question of all remains: are we the first civilization forced to live in the gravity of shadows? Or is the dark already staring back? For billions of years, the absolute edge of our solar system has been a quiet, frozen graveyard. Far beyond the orbit of Neptune, past the chaotic scattering of the Kuiper Belt, lies the ultimate frontier of our cosmic neighborhood. This is the Oort cloud, a vast spherical shell of icy debris that completely surrounds the solar system. It is filled with trillions of ancient, dormant comets, chunks of frozen methane, and rocky asteroids that have been drifting in a gentle, perfectly balanced slumber since the very birth of our sun. Because it is located up to 100,000 times further from the sun than the Earth is, the gravitational tether holding these icy bodies in place is incredibly weak. They exist in a delicate, fragile harmony, moving at a glacial pace through the freezing dark. But this serene, icy shell is also our first line of defense, and it is the exact place where the invisible intruder makes its terrifying presence known. When the primordial black hole silently crosses this boundary, it does not suck up the entire Oort cloud like a vacuum cleaner. That is a common Hollywood misconception. Instead, it acts like an incredibly heavy, invisible bowling ball rolling through an infinite field of fragile glass pins. Even though the physical size of the black hole's event horizon might be smaller than a piece of fruit, its gravitational influence stretches out across billions of miles. As it plows through the Oort cloud, it creates a massive gravitational mess, wildly distorting the fabric of space-time around it. The incredibly delicate orbits of these icy, comet-like objects are instantly shattered by the passing void. The black hole's immense mass grips the surrounding space, yanking trillions of frozen relics out of their ancient hibernation. What happens next is a masterclass in orbital chaos. The sudden gravitational kick hurls millions of comets and asteroids completely off their predictable courses. While some of these ancient ice worlds are violently flung outward into the uncharted depths of deep interstellar space, an unfathomable number are violently redirected. They are suddenly pulled from the outer edges of the solar system and flung aggressively inward, sent hurtling on a direct collision course toward the inner planets, including Earth. The invisible predator has just fired a cosmic shotgun blast right at the heart of our solar system. Down on Earth, humanity is entirely oblivious to the dark mathematics unfolding billions of miles away. We are still living in the comforting illusion of the false alarm twist, believing that our planetary neighborhood is safe. But you cannot hide the disruption of millions of comets. The very first physical signs of the intruder's arrival do not come in the form of a black hole blocking out the sun, but as a spectacular, unprecedented change in our night sky. It begins beautifully. Astronomers notice a sudden uptick in cometary activity, and soon the general public is treated to the most breathtaking meteor showers in recorded human history. Night after night, the skies are painted with brilliant streaks of burning ice and rock as the first, fastest wave of Oort cloud debris impacts Earth's upper atmosphere. People gather on rooftops and in open fields, marveling at the glowing trails, completely unaware that they are watching the beginning of the end. But the light show doesn't stop. Days turn into weeks, and weeks turn into months, and the bombardment only intensifies. The beautiful meteor showers rapidly escalate into a terrifying, constant meteor storm. The sheer volume of debris entering the inner solar system is staggering. The night sky is no longer a canvas of calm, distant stars. It is violently alive, perpetually illuminated by the fiery deaths of thousands of meteors burning up in the stratosphere every single hour. This is where the deeply ingrained psychology of human denial takes over. Faced with a changing sky, humanity tries desperately to downplay the threat as a passing phase. Governments, space agencies, and news networks scramble to package the terrifying reality into a digestible, temporary weather event. They assure the public that we are simply passing through a dense, uncharted cluster of ancient comets. They bring experts onto television who confidently explain that the solar system is vast, and this intense period of cosmic bombardment will soon blow over. We tell ourselves that this is just a fascinating, once-in-a-lifetime astronomical anomaly. Furthermore, we place our blind faith in the gas giants. For billions of years, Jupiter has acted as our majestic cosmic shield, using its immense gravity to catch or deflect dangerous comets and asteroids away from the rocky inner. Planets. The public is endlessly reminded of Jupiter's protective role. We are told that the giant planet will sweep up the vast majority of this incoming Oort cloud debris, long before it ever threatens Earth. Society clings to this comforting narrative, choosing the safety of denial over the terrifying, unexplainable anomalies in the orbital data. People go back to work. Stock markets briefly dip, then stabilize. We adjust to the burning sky, normalizing the constant meteor storms as just another quirk of the modern era. But the denial cannot last forever. Jupiter is incredibly massive, but even its immense gravitational net cannot catch millions of projectiles fired from every conceivable angle. Earth begins to take hits. At first, it is just the remote, uninhabited areas of the globe, a blinding flash over the open ocean, a shockwave that flattens a remote Siberian forest. But as the barrage from the Oort cloud intensifies, the impacts become more frequent and far more deadly. Satellites are shredded in orbit, disrupting global communications and plunging entire continents into digital darkness. The constant meteor storm becomes a daily, agonizing game of Russian roulette for every city on the planet. Yet, amidst the panic of the falling rocks, a few isolated astronomers staring at the data realize a truth far more horrifying than the impacts themselves. Comets do not just suddenly alter their trajectories by the millions, they are reacting to something. The burning rocks raining down on Earth are not the primary threat, they are merely the bow wave of a much larger invisible ship. The meteor storm is the physical proof that our solar system is being actively disturbed by an unimaginable mass. The realization slowly sets in that the comets aren't an anomaly, but a herald. The invisible intruder has breached our outermost walls, the first phase of our destruction is complete, and the true monster is quietly making its way closer to the sun.